What are the triggers that force someone to file for bankruptcy?
The three common triggers for bankruptcy are unemployment, medical expenses, and divorce. Unemployment can trigger bankruptcy, which is pretty straightforward. And when I say unemployment, I also group underemployment in that category as well. Underemployment is when your hours are reduced or you're not able to find a job in your career field, or maybe previously you had a job but lost it and now you cannot get back to that same level of income. That happens, and even though we've had some economic recovery since the economic recession of 2008, it hasn't been quite as good as many would have you believe. And unfortunately, for a lot of people who are left in the dust, most of their old jobs no longer exist. In 2008, the sky started falling and the economy was crashing, so a lot of big employers out there had to cut thousands of jobs just to make ends meet for them. And even though the economy has come back for some of these employers, now that they're leaner, they're able to take those former payrolls and turn them into profits. Regarding medical debts, you could be diagnosed with something that you've never even thought of before, and it can completely change your life. Or if you have a child with special needs, that can create a large amount of medical bills. If you find yourself in that medical quagmire, you really get hit on both ends because not only are your expenses growing dramatically, but it becomes more and more difficult to generate the income to keep your head above water, not only to meet the monthly expenses that all families have, but also to chip away at these medical debts. With divorce, it's a very emotional time in most people's lives. Many of the decisions being made prior to and during the divorce are based on emotion and are difficult decisions to make. During the divorce, a lot of people don't stand back and really consider the consequences of filing the divorce. And one of those consequences that people might not be paying attention to is that after the divorce becomes very real, if both spouses were working during the marriage and one spouse leaves, the income for the household is going to drop dramatically. And even if there's child support or spousal maintenance coming in, it's not going to be the same. It's not 100% of what the former spouse was bringing into the household during the marriage. I've sat down with people who are not yet divorced, but they're separated, and it's pretty obvious to me that one of the things that led to the decision to get divorced was this debt burden that the couple was dealing with. The debt was creating so much stress in their lives, and they were arguing so much over what they were going to do about the $50,000 credit card debt, for example, that it caused a rift in their marriage, and it was something that they unfortunately couldn't come back from. If they would have perhaps taken the time to look at a bankruptcy earlier, maybe the circumstances could have been different. What's important to understand about bankruptcy filing and these triggers is that these triggers are external factors. These are things that happen to all kinds of people. Yet a lot of people assume that only reckless or irresponsible people filed for bankruptcy. That somehow it's an internal characteristic of people. It reflects poorly on your character. But in my experience, most people use debt responsibly and they make payments on it. Then if one of these triggering events happens and people aren't able to meet their monthly expenses and pay off the debt, filing bankruptcy doesn't mean you are a bad character. Life happens to a lot of people, and at some point, you need a safety net to get back on your feet. And that's why we have these bankruptcy laws.